Troy, okay, this next segment, we call it Phil's Five. 5 questions about you here. I know you grew up in Colorado. Who is your favorite player growing up?
That would be Roger Staubach of the Dallas Cowboys. I was a Cowboys fan growing up because of Roger Staubach. One of the highlights of my career was meeting him at Super Bowl 30 when I was covering that. And he was every bit the person I'd hoped. They say don't meet your heroes, but I was not disappointed in meeting Roger Staubach. But I just loved the way he played the game. So it was Roger Staubach, and in baseball, it was Ricky Henderson.
Ricky Henderson. Okay, yeah, 2 good ones there. Okay. Who is your favorite journalist growing up?
You know, I grew up reading Sports Illustrated, and Doug Looney, who ended up my professor at CU, was one of them. I would say as I got initially it was local, and so that would be Woody Page and Dick Connor and Rick Reilly. Those would be ones that I read frequently. Certainly, the way Rick Reilly and Woody wrote with a sense of humor, it helped inspire me in the way I write in that way. But I mean, and Jim Murray of the LA Times is someone I read a lot as I got older and I had access to the LA Times. But those are some of the ones that I read most frequently is columnists and magazine writers. I'd wanted growing up to write for Sports Illustrated, and then the dream kind of changed as the magazine changed, and it didn't really appeal to me to leave. I was a beat writer, and I really kind of found my way that way. But I would say that list of Rick Reilly, Woody Page, Dick Connor, Jim Murray, that group of writers.
You could definitely see that in your writing, Troy. I mean, with your sense of humor, that's what people love about you. So it's awesome to see that. Who's been your favorite player to cover?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think if there's like a top five, I'm sure I'm going to leave one or two out. But early in my career, in terms of covering an athlete, it was Dante Bichette. He was great to me. And when I was on the Rockies beat for the Times Call, I could call him on the hotel when they were on the road. I covered all home games and some spring training, but I didn't go on the road. I broke some stories about the Rockies when I was a young journalist because of Dante Bichette. So he would be on that short list of guys and he helped my career, frankly, because he took me so seriously that it allowed people, I think, even when you saw my clips, to see me in a different light as a young journalist.
Hmm.
So I'll always be indebted to Dante for that. And some of these are more baseball, but Troy Tulowitzki and I really connected. We're still, and we became even closer friends after he left the Rockies. But Troy Tulowitzki and Matt Holliday, Ryan Spilborghs were all in that group of guys that I became friends with after they left the team because of relationships we established. In terms of Broncos, there was some way back in the 90s, Howard Griffith, the
Yeah.
fullback who I still talk with here and there as someone that was just such a joy to be around. Mark Schlereth, covering him when he was on the Broncos. We're friends to this day. And then that no-fly zone group of, Chris Harris, T.J. Ward, and I would be remiss without that. And I just talked to him this past week. One of the players I respect most, and Justin Simmons is on that list as well. But that would be Brandon Marshall, the linebacker. What he did during the time of protest to take a stand, just a man of conviction, always honest, always available. As a journalist, you appreciate players who are available and candid, and it's different than like how a guy plays. It's like, is he at his locker after games? Is he in the locker room during the week? Is he there during tough times? Is he there during good times?
Mm.
And the guys that I've had the best relationships with understand that when you're good, I write you're good. When you're bad, I write you're bad. It's not my job to articulate and make excuses for people. That's not it. That's your franchise's job or the organization's job. And so the ones I've had the best relationships with understand that. Like I always tell them, think about how you root about your favorite team, and if they lost 52-10, and you opened up the paper, it would be online now. And it's like, oh, but they tried really hard. If they'd only converted 17 of those third downs, you'd be like, this guy's got no credibility. Like you want criticism now, fair. And like Preston Wilson would be another guy. Todd Helton, like I was saying, there's baseball is weird, Phil, because then you have a locker room of 25 guys. I would say like every year, like 20 to 22 are good guys. That's
Yeah.
why it's so hard to get a list. Football, it's not that they're not good guys. There's 53, and it's certainly not the percentage of baseball. And it's a gladiator mentality. They're mercenaries. It's totally different. I get it, but we don't get to know them in football. A lot of it's hit and run journalism. You're running up, getting your two questions in, going to the next locker. And so it's harder to develop a rapport with someone. I'm not looking to be friends, it's just a relationship. So we tell stories and they educate me. That's why, like, the no fly zone was so great to me. I would walk up and ask Chris or TJ or Darian or what is this coverage? What happened here? Can you explain this to me? Why did this go on? So I understood it better as a writer, because I
Mhm.
want to tell people what they don't know, take them where they can't go, but I don't have the answers. I grew up, I played football, but I didn't play in high school. I was a baseball, basketball player. So when it comes to football, I lean on the guys who are in it. So
Mhm.
it's different. But my top players, again, Dante will always be someone near that. Dante and Chulo and Matty Holiday and Spilborgs and the Justin Simmonses and Howard Griffiths and Mark Schlerers. I've been blessed to be around a lot of good dudes. And I've very, very, very few negative interactions with professional athletes. And I just feel like the best compliment I've ever had from an athlete is to, hey, I didn't like everything you wrote. I did like some of it, but you were fair. That's the compliment, is that, hey, you're fair to me.
Yeah, that's all you're looking for. And it'll be cool to see the no fly zone come back this week for this game. So yeah, cool to
We'll
mention
hear
those
him
guys.
before we see him, Phil. We'll hear him before we see him.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Yes. Do you have a most memorable interview, like a moment that sticks out with a player or coach?
I would say interviewing Tony Gwynn as a college journalist in Yuma, Arizona, because I had just stopped playing high school baseball and summer baseball. Tony Gwynn is someone that I grew up admiring, and I sat with him on a backfield in Yuma, Arizona, and interviewed him for like an hour with an
Wow.
old cassette recorder. That is always memorable to me. Like, it told me, and I didn't realize how great he was. As I thought, oh, all professional athletes like that. They're not, and nor should they be. But I was like, I knew I wanted to do this, but after interviewing him, I'm like, I 100% want to do this. Like, this is the life I want, because the interview was enlightening, it was educational, it was everything I'd hoped for. So that one sticks out. I mean, it's just having covered 140 baseball games a year, like, it's hard to come up with the one interviews. There were times with, when you get some time with Peyton Manning off to the side that are memorable, because of, he just, the way he sees the world, saw football, and saw the world was different. But it's funny, because those interviews become part of your daily fabric of players. One of my favorite interviews I ever did was that Super Bowl. I want to, so it's 33, right? The one in Miami,
Mhm.
was interviewing the members of the rock band Kiss, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, because I grew up listening to Kiss as a kid, so I remember that more than I would an interview with a player, because you interviews. I mean, it's literally probably in the thousands of the interviews now. So I would say the Tony Gwynn one, because it really reminded me, like, this is what I want to do. And one that just sticks out as we talk here right now is interviewing the members of Kiss, specifically Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. And I got into a wrestling match with Bam Bam Bigelow in the Yuma airport, where he put me in a choke block when I said that Lawrence Taylor was going to kill him at WrestleMania. Those are my memories of.
Those would stick out, I'm sure, Troy. Okay, and then the last one here for you. What's an event that you want to cover but you haven't had the chance to just yet?
There's two. Kentucky Derby would be one. It's just because it's just like, you say a bucket list thing. Kentucky Derby, and I would really like to do Wimbledon. I want to go back to London. My wife and I had a
Mm.
great time in London. It was literally the only highlight of that clown show season with Hackett, was that trip to London. I loved everything about London. The people were great. Everything was great about it. And I don't know if it was just because we needed something different to get us away from that seat. But I just loved London. I want to go back if they play in Madrid or they play in Australia. I want to, but the one I would like to cover a Kentucky Derby. So it's some of the normal checklist stuff: Kentucky Derby, a Masters, and Wimbledon. Like those, because
Mhm.
those are things I grew up in my childhood as these hallmark type events. I've covered. I mean, how many Super Bowls? 6 or 7. Covered probably 12 World Series. I mean, I've been blessed to cover a lot of huge events, NCAA tournament basketball games. So for me, I would say it's just kind of those off the beaten path: Wimbledon, Kentucky Derby, the Masters.
Oh, those are huge bucket list items, I think, for any sports fan. So a good list there for sure, Troy.